Thank you once again for coming back to the channel, and as you can see from the thumbnail, this video is not about making capes. Although this clip here shows you the cape where I am at now, it also shows you the detail that I'm missing, and that's the belt. And it doesn't matter if you have a wonderful cape. If you don't have that belt, the outfit is not complete, especially if it needs pouches. So I did some homework, did a lot of pattern cutting, and it turns out I had the pattern and the sample to follow. And if you have some of those Hot Toys Batmans, you see that those pouches that come apart are very easy to make. So that's what I did. I followed one that was falling apart, made a pattern, and this is what I will show you today for your 1/10 scale figure. And of course you can apply it to anything else. It's not a cape making video, but it is a video about making the accessory that goes with that outfit. In this case, the pouches on the belt. So let's get started. Now, it is not a difficult process, but it is tedious and time consuming because they are so small. This is the end result. We want to get to a very small pouch with a simulated button snap on the front, which is really a piece of beading jewelry. Now, you can choose your take on the material. I chose pleather, a yellow pleather as you can see here, but you can choose cotton or any other material you have. This is the simple one that I started with, and it's a thinner one than the one on the right, but it's the same concept, except the one on the right is a little bit more elaborate. Now, it all starts with sandwiching layers of that material, in this case the pleather. So you can go 4 layers, 5 layers, you can go 2 layers if you want it really thin like this, or you can go 6 layers if you want it really thick and bulky like the one on the right. It all depends on your take. Again, once you've got your sandwiched piece of material with the glue that you prefer to use, and I just use the Fabricating glue, cut down a strip of that same material. In this case, again, it is the pleather, and the same width, and you want to cut it at least 4 times larger. Glue the one side of your pouch interior, and by the way, the pouches for those Hot Toys is nothing but foam, and then they wrap them just like this. So in this case, take the glued end, flip it over, and tack it down to your material. A little harder to do in front of the camera, but you just want to make sure that it is flush with the edges that you cut. That way you don't have to trim down anything. Now once you've got this, press it down, make sure it takes well, and then glue the opposite side and wrap the material around that side. That way you'll have a bottom edge that is rounded, and there are no seams, there's no sewing, it's all about gluing together. And now wrap this onto the material itself. Let's get all this stuff out of the way. Like I said, this is very tiny, so it makes it tedious and time consuming. And there you go. There's your one part of the pouch. And now, the excess material, now you can determine how big you want that flap. I generally go about halfway down the pouch and then just cut it there. And then you can trim the corners and glue the flap down to make it look like it's a one-piece unit. This way, it gives you the simulated look like these pouches actually have something in them instead of just epoxy or a piece of cardboard or a piece of foam. You actually have what looks like a working pouch. Now you can take your rotary tool and trim down the top if your scissors aren't sharp enough or they don't give you a straight cut. It looks like I didn't cut it right anyway. I just got to trim it down just a little bit more. So anyway, once you trim it down to what your liking is, then all you got to do is glue that edge down over the top, and you've got yourself a small pouch. Once the glue is dry, and of course to allow it to dry, you should clamp it or put a safety pin on top of it to hold it down while it dries. I usually use these little clippers, and I just cut the corners off just to make it look a little bit more authentic or realistic. Then I glued down the flap, like I said, mentioned before. I'm using the Fabricating glue. You can use whatever glue you like. Remember, if you use the transparent glue, it's much better because it will not dry white. And if you have any excess, it'll dry transparent. And because it's material, it will dry rather quickly. So I clamp it down, let it dry for 30 minutes, and then I can come back and add that decorative piece on the end. So now it is fully dry. Now we're going to take a piece of this jewelry, and it comes as a kit. You could probably find just the little tiny pieces a little bit smaller, or individually I should say. Let me back out just a minute. Here is the piece we're going to glue to the top. We want to simulate a button snap. It is a metal piece, and I'm going to take the end of my tweezers and I'm just going to press it into it so it makes an indentation. It is not glued in yet. It's only indented, showing me where I want to place my glue. And if I bring it up close to the camera, you'll see that indentation, and it'll give you an idea where you're going to place it. If you want to leave it like this, it's not going to last. That indentation will disappear. Now, the best thing to do is just glue it in. So we're going to take another clamp, the one that was on the other that was drying. We're going to indent it as well, and then we're going to use some super glue. If you want to use the other glue, the Fabricating, that's fine, but it takes a little longer to dry, and the super glue obviously will be that much quicker. So I decided to use the super glue, and this is the the Loctite, because it's a transparent gel, and I can very easily place the glue where I need it, and then place the metal piece or button that I want on top. Well, what simulates a button snap. Because it dries quickly, it's going to stay in place, and it's going to be pretty much permanent. That's it. We're done. You can press it down if you like, but you're going to have to be careful that it doesn't stick to your tools, in this case these tweezers. But there it is. There's one pouch, and now you've got to produce as many pouches as you want. So a belt can have 6 pouches, it can have 8 pouches, it all depends. Let's go on to the belt itself, because these pouches have to be attached to something. So here is a piece of fabric tape. It is an iron-on tape. I'm taking a piece of the same material, which is the pleather, yellow pleather. It's pleather on one side, and it's actually yellow material on one. So I'm going to glue down this strip of glue onto the actual fabric, not the pleather itself. Once I iron this on, this will be on here permanently. Then I'm going to fold it over onto itself. So make sure it's well ironed on. Peel away the backing, or the wax paper that is holding it down, and then it'll expose the other half of the glue. Now, we're going to fold it over onto itself and iron one corner just to tack it down, and then we'll place it in between this blue material to make a barrier, because the iron will stick to that pleather. This is a different pleather than the others that I've used, and it's really not the easiest to work with. You just want to tack it down. You don't want to press too hard, because it will stick to the iron. So making a barrier with another piece of material, folding it over itself, and then folding it on top of that in between the two pieces of material. Then iron over the pleather or the material of your choice, and make sure it's a nice bonded seam, or a nice bond between the two pieces of material. In this case, what I'm bonding is the actual pleather onto itself. So now you have pleather on both sides, and now we're going to trim it to the width of the belt that we need. This is only about 5 inches. So we're going to cut off the ends and cut off the excess at the bottom that you see there, and then we're going to trim it down to the thickness that we need for the belt. Now at the top, if you can tell, there's a slight bubble or bulge. Well, that's an open slot that is left from that fold, and now that gives us a space to add a wire. So if you wanted to add a wire to attach your belt to the figure, that is actually really nice because you can use that wire to hold it in place as you glue it down. If not, you don't have to have it. It's no big deal. You can just tape down the belt as it is glued down and the glue is drying. So here's the width that we cut out. It may be too big. It all depends on the figure that you are trying to work on. Now, this is a little big for my taste because the pouches are almost just as big. Now here's that space at the top from that fold, and it's just big enough to add a 20 gauge wire. But we don't need a 20 gauge wire on a belt. That's overkill. But if this is what you needed to make a design, look what you can do once the wire is in. And you can do all kinds of stuff. So if you wanted to make material that's like flying in the wind, this would be the way to do it. Now, obviously we're not here for that. We are here for making a belt for these pouches. So let's slide the wire back out of here. And let's trim this belt just a little bit more to make it a little bit more narrow so that we can fit those pouches and make it look like it's an actual, well, Batman belt or whatever character you want to work on. So I'm going to trim it down to what would be maybe the width that I need for that particular figure. Now once you trim it down, you can readjust it or refit it to the figure you're working on, and then determine, of course, how much more you have to adjust and how big of a wire you'll need to cut to insert into that piece. That way you don't have an excess of wire. The wire, as I said, will help you hold it in place. It will help you create the shape that's needed, and it just makes it a lot easier. So you want to cut just a little bit longer to be able to either glue another piece underneath it to hold it down, or if you want, you can just glue it down directly through the trunks. And that's pretty much the way a lot of these figures come, with the belt glued to the trunks. So once you've cut it, you can also cut the angle of that belt depending on the character. On the Robin, there is a slight angle to the actual belt where it meets. On the Batman figure, it's a straight cut because there's a square buckle that goes over that cut. And it's a little bit different on the Robin. So I'm going to cut just a little bit more to make it just a little bit more narrow for this particular belt. This is just a little too thick. Now it's a lot better. So now that we've got this here, now it's time to add the pouches. So now you got to figure out where along the belt you need to place these. Well, you want to have a margin on both sides because you know there's a buckle that's going to cover both ends. How far from that to the inside do you want to place those pouches? Well, that's going to be all up to you. It can be a 1/4 inch, it can be 1/8 of an inch. Just determine that before you actually start gluing this down. So place them in their location, see if that looks good to you, and if it does, then glue it down. You'll have to clamp it down to hold them in place while they dry. Now here's a look at the finished product with the pouches already attached on the belt. I have the wire in there just to give it some shape. It is completely finished. Well, you can add more pouches if you want. I only added 4 because of the video. I didn't want to make it too long. I did this belt and of course the one that's on the figure. So I'm going to leave you with some video of the unfinished figure itself, but the finished product of the belt. And then if there are any questions that you've got, let me know in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And then I'll show you the actual cape making. In the meantime, enjoy the video of Robin and then the belt by itself on the computers. We'll see you here next time. Just in case you need a reminder, there is a giveaway at 7,000 subscribers, and you do have to be a U.S. resident to win this product, and I will mail it out to you. Yes, Superboy does come with the glasses. That is the head sculpt, only the head sculpt. So if you're interested in winning a Superboy head sculpt for your custom figure, let me know. And of course, make sure you're in the comments so that I can see your participation. We'll see you here next time.